Welcome to Three Man Coverage Podcast. I'm Freddie. This is Yen. This is Gino. Week 3 in the history books. What a week it was in the NFL. Some unexpected results, I'm sure the boys will agree, which have ultimately affected some of our fantasy performances in some of the leagues, and I'm sure it affected yours throughout week 3. Boys, any thoughts on the week that's just gone?
I think it was a bit of an equaliser week for the teams that may not have been so lucky to get a W on the board yet. Big shock for me was the Broncos over the Bucks. Like, who would have seen that coming? And it wasn't even close either. Where did that come from?
No, you're not wrong. That was one of the shocking results there. So Tampa Broncos. The one for me definitely was a shocker was the Vikings and Texans game. I mean, absolutely blew out CJ Stroud and crowd there and co. So 34-7. So I wasn't expecting that game. So if you had CJ Stroud on your fantasy lineup, performed below par this week. There's probably a couple of other games as well. You can probably go through Bengals, Commanders, Niners, Rams as well. Yeah. Any thoughts on your side?
My thoughts are that there are still a lot of stars that are not performing up to their draft capital, which is disappointing to see. And I think it just goes back to the thing where I've been saying where if you don't have a proper preseason, you're not going to perform too well in the actual season itself. And you can see it on display with a number of players, but you can also see it on display with the players that are actually doing well. For example, Saquon Barkley, RB1 at the moment. He was there taking snaps with and building a rapport with the O-line and Jalen Hurts. So it's clear why he's the clear dominant number one at the moment. As for the rest of them, it's been really, really disappointing, especially if you spent like second, third, fifth round pick on absolute superstars who are getting you 10 to 15 points a game.
Yep. Sorry, G.
No, I was just going to touch on a specific player that we ended up having a short conversation on after the Thursday night football game in Garrett Wilson. And not necessarily that, I mean, I don't know if he played a lot of preseason time, but he just doesn't seem to be the guy, really, I don't think. And again, it could be because of what you're saying and not getting enough preseason snaps. Having said that, the Jets seem like they are ticking along a lot better, and Aaron Rodgers is now obviously 3 games into a season coming off that massive injury. But Garrett Wilson is another one that stands out for me as well. Back end first round, high second round potential pick for most drafters this year, and just hasn't really lived up to expectation.
Yeah, he got the work in this week. He had 9 targets for 5 receptions, but his yards, underwhelming. He scored a touchdown as well, so 33 yards and a touchdown. But Alan Lazard looks like it's getting a bit of attention in New York there over week 3. But yes, I agree with you. I took Garrett Wilson in round 2, and he's performed below expectation. But that's later on down the podcast, so thanks, Gino, for stealing my thunder, because we've got, but that's okay. That's okay because there's actually a couple of candidates that we can talk about later in the podcast. So, anyways, without further ado, we're going to kick on ahead with the first segment. So, go waiver wire ads, boys. If you're looking for something in the market, considering with the injuries that are ongoing, particularly through the first 3 weeks, running back seems like a place that you could target. Any running backs that you foresee that you'd put on your waiver wire list for this week?
Well, my personal recommendation is to start cuffing your star running backs. Like, for example, I drafted Kenneth Walker and I had to pick up Zach Charbonnet, for example, the last couple of weeks. I haven't afforded to drop him either because Walker's dealing with an oblique injury, but thankfully he's performed okay. Like, he scored 15 and 25 points in consecutive weeks. Should you be worried if you drafted Kenneth Walker? Not so much, because I still think Kenneth Walker is a better player. But then if you're looking at it down the line as well, we've got an injury to Christian McCaffrey. He was out. So if you picked up Jordan Mason, you are laughing now. It's just ensuring security, especially like, let's say, the New York Jets, for example, and you got Bryce Hall. You should be considering drafting Braylon Allen, because if Bryce Hall does go down, Braylon Allen's going to be the workhorse back. And just in the small snippets that you've seen from Braylon Allen, I think he's going to be a viable, even like flex play in some weeks as well. The kid's got some talent. So for me, if we're looking at running backs and they're still available, like I'd be looking at drafting Braylon Allen or picking up Braylon Allen in the waiver wire. Samar JP Ryan, even though Carson Steele looked okay, and maybe Tyler Algier, but Bijan Robinson looks okay, but start like protecting yourself and start drafting looking at picking up the cuffs for your running backs. I think there should be of the high priority. And the one who's also going to get more game time as of this week, I should say, his coach has already come out and say that Bucky Irving is going to start supplanting Rashad White. I said it at the beginning of the season. I didn't like him as a runner. It's starting to be seen. He was more a PPR guy because what he could do, run after catch. But on the ground, Bucky Irving is a better running back.
100%. Handcuffing running backs for me has always been a mantra, I guess you'd call it, for my fantasy teams. I always look to do it. I'm still looking to do it. Wink, wink, Fred, please hurry up and accept this trade for Montgomery, for goodness sake.
Accept it.
But it is definitely the way to go. And I think we see a lot of running backs every year more than any other position, I would have thought, in terms of consistent injuries. And because the running back position is fairly thin, it's a very, very good idea to handcuff. And like I said, I've always tried to do it. I'm obviously in a good position now, having Jordan Mason in both of our main leagues. And if McCaffrey somehow ends up having surgery, for example, he was visiting in Germany over the weekend. So, surgery is apparently going to be a potential option for him now. I might be looking at someone that could take me, 10, 12 weeks into the season before McCaffrey comes back. But in terms of a waiver wire ad, I think for me, the standout is Chuba Hubbard at the Panthers. Now, I know that Jonathan Brooks is going to be coming back at some point, the rookie that they drafted, but it's clear that the Red Rocket, Andy Dalton, and the quarterback change there has sparked some life into that offense. So Chuba Hubbard, just quickly, he had 114 rush yards on 21 carries, so 5.4 a clip, as well as adding 55 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. So 169 total. That is no coincidence given the better quarterback play, I think. And for me, even last year, Chuba Hubbard was someone that was quite valuable in PPR, even as a flex. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if their offense continues to play well with Andy Dalton under center, I think that Chuba Hubbard is a very, very good ad moving forward, even with Jonathan Brooks, because they're going to ease him in. He's not going to be a workhorse from the start.
Nice. Tight end seems to be a bit of a pinch point in my lineup, actually in a couple of my lineups as well. If you're looking at a tight end, boys, who would you look at the waiver wire? Now, I can see in week 3, right? The round out the top 5, Dallas Goedert, Cole Kmet, Jake Ferguson, Tyler Conklin, and Dalton Kincaid, which I could see probably at least 3 of them would have been drafted, but Cole Kmet being up there as the number 2 tight end for week 3. It's actually skyrocketed his position in terms of overall. He's at tight end 3 for the season overall. So 17 targets, 15 receptions, 128 yards, and a touchdown for the first 3 weeks. Would you consider him, considering in that offense in Chicago there?
No. Caleb Williams is throwing the ball, but let's put it in context. It's an anomaly because it's based off one good week out of the 3. Same could be said about Dallas Goedert. He got about 20 points this week, but he's been averaging 5 points a game. I mean, if you need the protection in the tight end spot, sure, try to look at pick him up, especially if you're a bit thin and so forth. But it just looks like the tight end position is just not being utilized, and someone will go bang one week and then have a quiet game the next week. Look at Isaiah Likely. He had 30 points the first week. Tight end, I think he's still tight end 1 just based on what he did from his first week of production. So if you need cover, get them, but don't think they're going to be stalwarts in your team and going to produce week in and week out. So yeah, if you do definitely need cover and got injury, pick them up, but don't expect them to be cemented tight end 1s week in and week out.
Yeah, it's a hard position this year, if I can be honest with you. I mean, I've got a swings and roundabouts at the moment with Evan Ingram and Dalton Schultz, who was a reliable target, at the Cowboys and even at the Texans last year. I feel like he's been overlooked with some of the targets in Houston. Some of the wide receivers in Houston. So a lot of mouths to feed in Houston. We've touched on this before as well. So yeah, it'll be another week of swings and roundabouts in terms of that. Any other waiver wire ads, guys? You think about considering? Look, Sam Darnold's actually had a phenomenal 3 weeks. Would you consider him up as a potential waiver wire ad if you're looking at quarterback?
Maybe it looks like he has exercised his demons and no longer seeing ghosts, but I still wouldn't pick him up. I've got 2 quarterbacks anyway at the moment. Somehow someone dropped Jordan Love, so he's a handy backup to have on the bench. But the other 2 people that you should probably consider picking up is Juwan Jennings, considering he had 3 touchdowns and 175 yards. I think he's still on a lot of waiver wire pickups at the moment. The other 2, old reliable Jacoby Myers, he just seems to get the job done as a low-end wide receiver too. Tyler Lockett had a pretty good game as well this week. And the other one as well that you should probably consider picking up is maybe Christian Watson now that Jordan Love looks ready to come back as well. But Juwan Jennings, if Debo is going to be out another couple of weeks, which I think he will be, Juwan Jennings, he had a pretty great rapport with Brock Purdy over the weekend. So I think he should be the number 1 wide receiver to potentially pick up and see how he goes from there.
Very concerning. Very concerning if you're a Aiyuk. If you've got Aiyuk in your lineup, probably not something you want to hear if you're looking to start Aiyuk as a flex or your wide receiver too. But Aiyuk is underperforming the last 3 weeks. Got his money, got the bag, and he settled with it. So Juwan Jennings, though, 11 targets, 11 receptions off 12 targets, had a monster week, which has actually positioned him as wide receiver number 2 for the first 3 weeks of the NFL. So who would have thought that, Juwan Jennings? But it is coming off one good week. He basically got all his production or half his production in 1 week. So let's see if he keeps it up. But if you're Aiyuk...
And let's put it into context. George Kittle also was not playing. Debo was out. And Brandon Aiyuk looks like a shell of himself. So, but again, like I said, if Debo is out, I think there is still some production for him. He was there in the offseason where Brandon Aiyuk wasn't. So we'll see.
I think he hit the nail on the head with that exact point that because he was there and he's obviously built the rapport with Brock Purdy whilst Aiyuk was mucking the Patriots, the Browns and the Steelers around whilst looking for a contract. I think you hit the nail on the head.
All right. So for waiver wire ads, if you've got any questions on waiver, send us a comment in our YouTube links. We'll send you some more info if you need anything else. We're going to go into our next segment. So we're going to do buy, hold, or sell. Fellas, right off the top, first cab off the rank, Garrett Wilson. We touched on him briefly. Guys, are we buying, are we holding, or are we selling?
Take the lead, Yen. This is your boy.
He is my boy, and I don't know, I am on the fence with him. I have watched him play, and I messaged you during the game last week, and I just said, look, I know he's the number 1 wide receiver, but he just doesn't look like a number 1 wide receiver. It's hard to say. He doesn't do anything spectacular. And I was a defender of him during the preseason where I'm like, I think this guy is better than Puka Nacua because he's had 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons with average quarterback play. So let's see what he does with Aaron Rodgers. And all right, it's really early into the season and it could be a way too early call, but he just doesn't look like anything special. He's not doing any contested catching. His route running looks okay, but he doesn't seem to get a decent release either. So I don't know, for me right now, it's probably a hold because they do have a pretty good schedule. But at the same time, I would be concerned because he's not putting up those Davante Adams numbers that everyone expected him to put up. Like I said, Aaron Rodgers as wide receiver 1 has averaged no less than wide receiver 8. And Garrett Wilson just does not look like it. He's not getting the red zone looks. Alan Lazard is getting those red zone looks. And we joked about it, but he seems to be the more damaging wide receiver at the moment. So I would hold for the time being for a couple of weeks, and looks like I'm giving Freddie some advice here. But yeah, that's where I would stand. But I can understand as well if people want to sell him and try and get something off him. But what are you going to get at this particular point in time?
True.
Not much, especially with the capital that you've invested in him. I think it's a hold for now as well. I mean, he's had 15 catches for 150 and 1 touchdown, so averaging 5 catches for 50 yards and 0.3 of a touchdown a game so far. It's not quite where you want your wide receiver one to be, picking him early on in your draft, but I did watch the game and I did see the Jets offense ticking along a lot better. Like I said earlier, Aaron Rodgers is 3 games in now, 3 games removed from the injury. The more game time he has, the better. I think Garrett Wilson will be a little bit of a slow burner for the season, but I think once he actually gets going, he'll be okay. But for me, it's more just about that he doesn't seem to command the ball like a true wide receiver one, e.g., Davante Adams and the big boys, Justin Jefferson. Like, he doesn't seem to command or have the persona of a true wide receiver one, like, give me the ball now. It seems a little bit blasé about it all.
He reminds me of Amari Cooper. That's the type of wide receiver one he is.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad comparison, actually. And I guess the stats are proving it too. He's had all 1,000 yard seasons, I'm pretty sure, since he's been in the league. Cooper has as well, as barring one season. But yeah, that's actually a pretty good comparison. I feel that Amari Cooper is in that same boat. Yep.
What gives you the sense about Garrett Wilson with Amari Cooper? Is it because he can go quiet in some games? Is that a fair assumption? That's there's these peaks and then it just plateaus and flattens off his production.
Well, it's that. Like Amari Cooper's bread and butter was route running. Like, Garrett Wilson's a decent route runner, so I guess that's the comparison there. I think if you're looking early on in Amari Cooper's career as well, I think he was a little bit more dominant. Let's be real. Like, he had a better release, he had bigger games as well. And that's not to say that Garrett Wilson hasn't had bigger games, but the differences between their good and bad games are huge. Like, they'll go missing for huge stretches. And they're not divas or anything like that, but they go missing. But if they're on, they're on. So they're going to have those huge games as well. So that's why I think he's like Amari Cooper.
Okay, Garrett Wilson, by the way, tied 10th in terms of targets in all of fantasy. So considering where he is in his position in fantasy, so wide receiver 34, he's still in the top 10 in terms of targets. So for me, it's a hold. I have Garrett Wilson, so it's a hold for me. And he could be a handy trade bait if the iron does strike hot. So, Gino, Yen, you might be in for a couple of messages in a few weeks' time, maybe for Montgomery, that elusive Montgomery that Gino's after.
I'm hoping that happens this week,
Bijan Robinson, I'm all good.
Well, good segue. We're actually buy, hold, sell. Bijan Robinson. Take it away, fellas. What are you thinking? We buying, we holding, we're selling?
Look, I don't have him. I've got him in one league. Let's be real, I've got him in most leagues. So as an owner of Bijan, I'm holding him. In the first couple of games, he was getting the yards, but he wasn't getting the touchdowns. In week 3, he got a touchdown, but he didn't get the yards. And that's all to do with the play calling, because they were trying to go outside zone every single time. Opposition knew it, like Spags knew it. They had schemed for it, and they couldn't get any offense going, especially the run game. So hopefully we see some variations. Now, if I was not an owner of Bijan, I would be looking to buy him at any cost, to be honest with you. And I am trying to get Bijan Robinson, Freddie. So as an owner, I would hold him. As someone who doesn't have him, I'm really looking to buy him.
Well, that just depends on the seller too, Yen. If someone's willing to sell him, it's got to, the price has got to be
seller,
right. It's Larry,
and the person also has to say, yeah, I'm interested, or yeah, I'm not ready to trade as well, instead of giving me bullshit reasons. Yeah, let me have a look at your team, and then I'll be after a week.
Look, I've been burnt by a few trades in the past, right? So I'm just going to, I have to be very tentative when it comes to proposals, but I'll have another look at it.
Well, I got two
Bijan
tight
Robinson,
ends
by
that
the
are
way.
on offer.
Oh, geez. Having a couple of sharks here just at me, right? And I've not thrown any proposal back to your way. Have a look at this. Is to our 54 subscribers on YouTube. Have a look. This is what I'm dealing with. All right, Bijan Robinson. So, yes. So, 4.1 yards for the season of 3 weeks. It would have brought his average down because he ran the ball 16 times at 1.9 yards a clip. So, I think anyone would be nervous after one performance, but I'm not. So, I'm holding here with Bijan. I don't know. If you were saying you were holding with Bijan, or you'd be, yep. And
Yep.
Gino, quickly, Bijan, while we're on the second person.
I am buying. Buy, because the Falcons started quite slow the first 2 weeks. We know that, even though the Falcons got the win on that final drive against the Eagles, their offense is just starting to click now. And just to complement that, Drake London has also started to come good in that offense as well. So I think if you can get one of the Atlanta guys, not necessarily Pitts, I think London and Bijan are the two, but definitely buy, because that offense is just starting to open up now.
All right, we better move forward. Derrick Henry, guys, we buying, holding, or selling?
Well, for me, I'd be selling him off a big game because there are people that are big Derrick Henry fans, so you can get quite a few pieces for him. So, for me, again, you touched on it, and I said Derrick Henry will have a big game this week against Dallas because he'll make them rue the day that they didn't pick him up, considering he lives and trains in Dallas. But I think this is a perfect opportunity to sell Derrick Henry, sell him on the high while you can, and get a couple of pieces because the offense doesn't look fantastic. They ran through Dallas, and that was to be expected considering what Alvin Kamara did the last week or so. I get it; he'll get a lot of opportunities in terms of the run game if they're in front, but I'm starting to lean on what you have said, Fred. And all right, he had a big day last week, but I think this is the perfect time to sell Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I'm going to second that. I'm definitely going to second that. So I've done a bit of a 180
Wow.
on Henry, and you two
Wow.
know that I absolutely love him. I love Derrick Henry, and I've had him, barring this year, the last 2 years. But that offense is starting to really worry me now. And obviously because I have a piece of it in Mark Andrews, who we may touch on later on. But I think you're right. I think it's time to sell while the price is high, fix up and balance your team where you need it, where you've got a couple of weaknesses, or who knows, even just trade for 2 running backs, for example, just to sort of have a bit more depth. So I think, I'm kind of going that way now a little bit myself.
Yeah, you know how I feel. It's not because of Derrick Henry. It's because of how the Ravens run their offenses and under Lamar Jackson. You're talking about Derrick Henry, 25 yards, 25 rushing attempts. Lamar Jackson with 14. So you're talking about almost 40 snaps that are run. They're just been pure rushes, right? So I don't foresee Derrick Henry to have that level of production week on week. Like Ian said, it's an anomaly. And I think it's just the schematics itself. It's just the system itself. So if you're looking to sell him now while the iron is hot. I agree.
Yep.
Alvin Kamara, guys, buy, hold, sell.
I think it's the same. He's been in some good form. And when I say I think it's the same, I think you should sell while the price is high. We know generally he doesn't have the best yards per carry average. So PPR leagues, he's valuable because of obviously his pass catching ability. But don't know. I think as time goes on, the Saints' offense will get found out a little bit more. Defenses will adjust to it. They're not really using Jamal Williams much, so is Kamara going to increase his efficiency? I don't think so. The only question is he going to be valuable enough? Sorry, is he going to be too valuable in the passing game to get rid of? But like similar to Henry and his massive game this week, Kamara had a huge game last week. I think you could pretty safely say that he's not going to reach that mark again or that score again this week. So I would sell.
I'm with you, and I sold him last week in another league. And you question why? Look, I sold him for Amon-Ra, like a straight swap. I think Amon-Ra is a top 5 wide receiver, and I don't think Alvin Kamara is going to finish in the top 10 for running backs. And you can see it this week. Like, he didn't get any touchdowns this week. Got a few catches. His rushing attempts are not great. Let's be real. And this was against. Could you say the defense this week was better than the Dallas Cowboys in terms of rush defense? But they obviously planned to neutralize him, and his yards per carry were like 3.9 or something like that. So sell him. Sell. I sold him. Like I said, I sold him in a league last week.
Mm-hmm.
26 rushing attempts, 3.3 in for week 3, Alvin Kamara. So, yeah, even worse than that. But he is averaging 20 carries a game. So there is a level of focus there for Kamara if you're looking to. If I had him, I would hold. And see how the season plays out. So, yeah, I'm neither there or here, but if I would, I'd hold. Okay, Mahomes. Buy, hold, sell. So this is the first quarterback, actually. So, interesting one. What are you thinking, boys? I will say, though, Mahomes last week, 151 yards. This week, just got pipped by Atlanta again. He hasn't looked the greatest in the last 3 weeks, but then again, KC were a bit slow in the beginning. Not to say that their season, they're being a 3-0 is slow, but a big focus of their offense is Mahomes, and he hasn't really looked like Mahomes that we used to. Thoughts?
Well, I'll start off because I had him last year, and the Chiefs started off in a similar vein that their offense wasn't necessarily humming on all gears. Mahomes has sort of started similarly this year. We know how obviously last season ended in terms of the real stats and the real stuff. They won the Super Bowl. But in terms of fantasy, I'm pretty sure he finished QB. I don't think it was lower than QB8. I'll say QB8 because that's where I remember him hovering around for most of the year last year. But how can you sell him? It's Mahomes. I think if you've invested in him, say in sort of around about the 4th round, if you went really early, or between 4 and 6, if you've invested in him, I think you have to hold because he's too good a quarterback to, I guess, to stagnate for the whole season. So I would say hold.
And just a branch off that too, like Kelce hasn't really featured in the offense too. So at some point, Kelce has to fire. Like you just can't expect it, and you would think Mahomes is going to hone in on Kelce throughout the season. So even though they're 3-0 at the moment, and Kelce's not featured in that offense, I expect that to increase. So I don't think Kelce's going to go away soon. I may have just jumped the gun because he's out next, but yeah, in terms of Mahomes,
that's what I was going to say. Like, they're so Rashid Rice focused.
Yeah.
Like, that seems to be their game plan. It's like, let's go to Rice or bust. So Kelce's not being featured. Now, is it Kelce, or is it that he's lost a step or something, or is it the play calling? They're not going to Xavier Worthy after the week 1 either, and he was meant to be the burner that could take the lid over the top. So you would hope that the playbook starts to open up a little bit more and they start utilizing these pieces, because offensively they are meant to be better, but they're just not showing it. So I would hold Patrick Mahomes, but I know a lot of people, you'd probably be looking at it going, oh my God, I wasted a 3rd round pick on him and he's not performing to par. But having said that, how can you trade him? Unless you're going to get like a piece like maybe, I don't know, Jordan Love and a Dak with something else, then you should probably consider it. But you should probably hold for another couple of weeks. Well, at least about week 6, 7, 8 to see how things start to develop. If they don't and things are relatively the same, then maybe you should start panicking then.
So just to go with Mahomes, Kelce, right? We just touched base on Kelce. What are you doing with Kelce? You buying, you're holding, you're selling?
Me personally, I would sell him. Like, I know you said they'll probably feature him more, but for me, again, looking at him, I don't know, man. He looks old. Like, and I know Father Time is undefeated. Like, this first few weeks, he looks old, man. He looks slower. that turn of foot he doesn't really have anymore. Don't get me wrong, he's still a smart player. So when he caught that touchdown, that was incredible. That's all just, he's a smart player, right? But don't expect you're going to get 1,000 yards off him. Don't expect you're going to get 800 yards off him. He's looking like he's going to be a serviceable tight end with about 600 yards and about 6 TDs this year. So I would look at someone who's in dire straits for a tight end and try to get a piece off him. That's what I would do. Like if you got tight end cover as well, I would look to sell him. Like for me, he just does not look good.
Yeah, touching on that, because I had the Mahomes Kelce stack last year in both leagues, and I was bitterly disappointed with the amount of capital I invested into both of them. I think Kelce is just continuing on from where he left off last year. He was slow last year. He's probably a little bit slower this year. I think they're just keeping him there for when the whips are really cracking come playoffs. He's going to be a target. He's going to be a threat. Then they're going to possibly be able to utilize, like you said, Xavier Worthy over the top, Rashid Rice through those intermediate routes as well. I think they're just going to try and keep him healthy, keep him there for when the time is right. So if you want to hold, but it is Travis Kelce, and I think you should probably sell and try and get something else for him.
I also believe that Succubus Taylor Swift has probably had an effect on his gameplay as well. What an indictment to the NFL she has been. I'm sick of watching her every time they have a home game. Like, I reckon that Illuminati gang that she's part of, she's sick Travis Kelce into it now as well. And he's like lost his powers, like the Monstars took their powers off the basketball players in the 1993 Space Jam movie. That's what it sounds like has happened to Travis Kelce.
Yeah, well, that's Taylor Swift is probably an indictment on him, not just the NFL. But yeah, Rashid Rice, just to touch on, he's wide receiver 4 throughout the season, 29 targets. So maybe Kelce's having an impact on the ascension of Rashid Rice in terms of drawing away coverage. So who has Rashid Rice, actually? I mean, I'd be looking to buy if he's, if he's around. That's none of us, is it?
I've got him in one league. I think another person has him in another league. There's no way anyone is selling Rashid Rice. No way right now.
Even for David Montgomery and Jerome Ford?
Not a chance.
No way. Not a chance.
That was just a little bit of a piss take for Gino there. Shaheed, and I'm assuming this is at New Orleans?
Yep. Sell him. Like you saw this week, he did nothing. Literally nothing. So he's big play dependent. And I don't know if you can sell him still, but he was in the top 10 for wide receivers the first couple of weeks because he took the lid off a couple of catches. But you can't see that happening week in and week out. I mean, he doesn't get the volume. Sell him if you can. If you can get anything, just take it.
Yeah, for sure. Cut the bait. Obviously, the donut that he got this week, it probably doesn't help. If you are trying to sell him, people will obviously look into that now, seeing that he is only going to be a deep threat. And will that happen every week? Probably not. So definitely cut the bait and sell.
Just on Rashid Shaheed, a bit off topic, but Jayden Reed is still in the top 10 in terms of wide receivers. And so after his big week 1 performance, he has 14 targets, 10 receptions at 20 yards a clip. I know that's not part of our list at the moment, but if you're looking at Jayden Reed, even though he's a fairly newcomer to the Green Bay offense, you looking to sell him? You looking to hold him? Buy?
No, I'd hold him if you had Jayden Reed. This is with Malik Willis too, as his quarterback for the last couple of weeks, who did a serviceable job, mind you. But I would be keeping him. No way I would be selling him.
Okay, our next is Tyreek Hill. So with the concussion to Tua at the moment, there's a bit of a quarterback roundabout happening in Miami, and now that they've got Tyler Huntley there, what are you thinking, boys? Tyreek Hill, you would have invested him in the first round if you got him. This would be a hard one to actually let go if you're looking to sell.
So if you drafted Tyreek Hill, you drafted him as either pick 1 or pick 2. Right now, based on that situation, you are selling Tyreek Hill. I know it's hard to say, but you got to get a couple of pieces for him because that situation is an absolute dumpster fire right now. The O-line is not very good. Their quarterback is not very good. You probably want to give it an opportunity to see what it looks like with Tyler Huntley there, and surely he gets the spot this week because Skylar Thompson is hurt, more like a fractured ego because he's no good and shouldn't be an NFL quarterback in the first place. But Tim Boyle looked better in the last quarter when he came on. And Tim Boyle sucked last year. NFL Jets backup for the last couple of seasons. So you'd want to sell him. Sell at the right price, maybe hold it for one more week to see what that relationship is like with Tyler Huntley, because he was a serviceable backup to Lamar Jackson the last couple of seasons. So see how he goes there, but I would be looking to sell Tyreek Hill.
I'm going to keep you there again, just while we're on it. Jaylen Waddle, I assume that you're going to sell him as well. We may as well just pair up the 2 Miami wide receivers as well. What are you thinking?
Absolutely. He's almost cuttable at this stage. If Tyreek Hill is getting barely any targets, Jaylen Waddle's just a person on the field at this particular point in time. You look to trade, you're not going to get anything for Jaylen Waddle. That's the thing. Unfortunately, he's going to be on your bench until the situation rectifies itself. And you paid high capital for him around the 4th round, and people were spruiking him all season. I didn't particularly see it. And you can see he had one decent game where he had one huge reception, but you can sell, but you're not going to get anything for him. At least with Tyreek Hill, based on the name value and everything, you could potentially get something for him.
Another wide receiver they got paid, and I think he got paid this offseason, right? With Aiyuk, they're just underperforming relative to their draft capital. So, Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, you buy, holding, or selling?
I think it depends on the Tua situation. Do we have any news of when he's going to be back? Not really. Not as yet, anyway.
Not that I've heard. Nope.
Yeah, so if we don't have any news at the moment, I think you just got to use Tyreek Hill's name and sell him, and you've got to get at least two decent pieces of your fantasy team. The quarterback play isn't going to be great. We know that. His floor now is severely capped because of the quarterback play. And we know, obviously, that his ceiling can be huge when Tua's playing, but unfortunately, we don't know when that's going to be. So Tyreek Hill is Tyreek Hill, and the allure of that name may bring you 2 decent players back. So I think it would be the time to sell as well.
You think if Tyler Huntley were to be named a starting quarterback this week, that Miami might have a chance, and there might be a resurgence in the hopes and dreams for Tyreek and Waddle owners in fantasy?
Maybe for Tyreek Hill, because he'll be the clear number 1 and he'll be the one that will be fed more often than not. But I haven't seen Jaylen Waddle. For the last couple of seasons, I haven't seen it in Jaylen Waddle. Again, he's similar to that Garrett Wilson, Amari Cooper mold, big play, but he's more big play dependent as well. So Tyreek Hill, hold for a week or so to see how he builds the relationship with Tyler Huntley. And so keep him, see what happens. But I think as well, the capital of the Miami running backs also increases now. The play calling was atrocious this week. I don't know what Mike McDaniel was doing, and they were so badly penalized on that offensive line. But Mike McDaniel looked like he aged about 15 years in that game. But I think the running backs of Achane and Raheem Mostert are definitely going to increase for the next couple of weeks.
If Mike McDaniels has aged 15 years, he's probably 23 now, because that guy has got the Felton New Youth on the side. That he's a young cat for a coach. All right, next one. Calvin Ridley, guys. You buying, holding, or selling?
Well, I'll go for this one because I've actually got him in the main league. It's a very, very hard one, I think, because he's been hit and miss all season. 3 games, average week 1, fantastic week 2, average week 3. It's going to probably come down to not necessarily game script, but how many passes they want Will Levis to throw. He's the clear number one. Having said that, DeAndre Hopkins out-targeted him this week, I think by 6.
5.
So, by 5.
Oh,
so there you go.
Yeah.
It was 6. I think it was like 10-4. Anyway, something like that, because I obviously had to have a look because he's in my team. But I don't know. For me, he's a hold, I think, because it is still only week 3. We've seen what he can do when he is targeted as the number 1 wide receiver. The only other thing is that obviously D-Hop is there. So if you can afford to hold for now, because I don't think you're going to get a hell of a lot. You might get something sort of lower end flex play if you do want to trade him, but I think he's a hold for now.
Sell him as a spud.
Can I have a mulligan on Tennessee? I was actually quite bullish on Tennessee before the season started, and they're 0-3, and Will Levis hasn't. He's had some real choppy playmaking moments throughout the season. Yeah, I'll probably sell on the whole Tennessee offense at the moment because I made a cold take that they may be a chance in the AFC South. So, yeah, I think I'm with you guys on Tennessee there. All right, and the last one to finish off our buy, hold, sell would be J.K. Dobbins.
Well, I'd hate to say I told you so. Like, I have a couple of weeks for a couple of my points, but I think he came crashing back to reality this week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. There was no way he was going to run that big, that efficient week in and week out, and he got found out against a better defense. So, sell if you can.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. For me, it's not even about the performance. For me, it's about the potential injury risk. Like, when has he last played a full season? We're 3 weeks into a season. He started well. For me, it's for where he is right now. Where are we? RB7 overall in half PPR. Like, it is sell time. Sell, JK, because I honestly can't see him running the season out.
He's actually out snapping Gus Edwards by 10, right? So, and he did get the line share in this week's loss to Pittsburgh. So he actually out snapped Gus Edwards by 12 rushing attempts there. So 15 attempts for 44 yards, not great. Yards per average at 2.9. So Pittsburgh had their way with J.K. Dobbins there. All right, for our next segment here, we're going to isolate this. We're going to have a bit of fun with it. So, Yen, you had a great spray last week for Caleb Williams. I want to give the floor to you and give us your spray this week. Spray him, Yen. Who you got?
Well, it's a little bit unfair that the spotlight is on me, but let's give it another go.
We're
going to start off with Caleb Williams again because let's be real, the scoreline did flatter him. His statistics also flattered him: 33 for 52 for 363 yards. All right, he threw a couple of touchdowns, but before that, he also had his regular 2 interceptions as well. He has a bad attitude. Those yards were put up by a couple of big plays that resulted in not much. I don't believe in him. I just hate his overall demeanor. Like the fact that he also sucked up when CJ Stroud was trying to give him some advice last week is like, who the hell are you? Like literally, you have achieved nothing. You suck. You're not living up to your potential. Get your head out of your butt and just start performing better and start taking some advice from people who have actually done it. So I'm not also blaming him, like Shane Waldron as well. Like, how did he get a job as an offensive coordinator? Like, there's no variation. There's nothing creative. Poor DJ Moore looks like he's bloody aged 20 years in the last 3 years, and he's looking at the situation going, what the hell have I put myself into signing this contract? And Matt Eberflus, if he is not fired by about week 6 or 7, the Chicago Bulls will continue to be in obscurity. So he's number 1. The next person, let's go with Bryce Young. Another one. Similar mold to Caleb Williams. He got benched last week and then he had a cry on the sidelines. And he was disappointing and looking to be traded because, you know what, he has a lot of credits in the bank to request a trade. And he got benched, and look at what the Panthers did. Andy Dalton looked like Andy Dalton's Pro Bowl season and threw for 3 touchdowns, and the Carolina Panthers offense was humming. Get a look at yourself in the mirror, and how about you develop as a quarterback and not expect everything to be fallen for you. You're about 23 years old. Develop your own craft and develop your mental as well, because that's the big thing as well. Like Caleb Williams and him, like, just expect everything to be handed to him. And Caleb Williams has also been handed such a perfect situation for a rookie QB as well, with 3 all-world wide receivers. All right, Bryce Young, not so much, not much of an O-line, not much of a running back, not much of wide receiver talent either. But you see Andy Dalton, who's about 75 years old, coming onto the field and throwing for 3 TDs, and then they're going for 300-400 yards in the game as a total offense. Says more about the quarterback than the actual play caller itself. The next person as well.
Wow, there's
While
3.
I am on it... No, okay, sorry. I'll take it easy.
No, go. This is great. Go.
Trevor Lawrence, I was a big believer in, huge believer in, especially after that come from behind comeback victory against the Chargers in that playoff game. But since then, for the last 2 seasons, he has really amounted to nothing. And again, I should have seen it before he got drafted when he said NFL or football is not that important to me or a priority to me. That should have screamed alarm bells. And I know it did for Gino, but I was willing to bypass that considering how good he was at Clemson and the number of games they won and the trophies and everything. But he has really done nothing. And if we're looking at today's game as well against the Buffalo Bills, 21 for 38 and 178 yards, 1 TD, one interception. And I saw some of the throws he was making. Like, he was not even like anywhere near the vicinity of a wide receiver at times. All right, there's a bit of pressure and so forth, and Doug Peterson also has a lot to answer for as well, because his play calling has been absolutely atrocious. But they drafted you another number 1 wide receiver in Brian Thomas. You're not utilizing him. You'd rather go the 5-10 yard route to Christian Kirk, who is not very good in the first place. Trevor Lawrence really needs to look at himself, because he was meant to be the next Jesus of the NFL, and hasn't amounted to that. And whilst we're on that particular game, Keon Coleman didn't play a snap for the first quarter of this particular game, and he didn't feature in the second quarter, and he pretty much didn't feature until like in the fourth quarter when Mitch Trubisky was on and the game was done and dusted. Now, the reason for that was he was late for the game. So they're like, you know what, we're sitting you. Like, you're a rookie kid, you haven't really done much, you weren't featured, you didn't get any targets last week, and you're coming late to a game. You're probably getting paid a couple of mil as well as a rookie. Get your head out of your ass as well, and let's start getting to at least games on time, and let's start putting what we do in practice into game time situations. Like, I think it's just like a societal thing where kids these days think they just get everything just handed to them and it's just going to work out for them. It's absolutely pathetic. But these are, all right, 4 young people who have not done much, probably given the benefit of the doubt, but they really, 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 really need to take a hard look at themselves. All 4 of them. The Bills are in a safer spot because they've got the 2025 MVP playing for them. But the Chicago Bears, the Carolina Panthers, they are in sticky situations, and the Jags. But the Jags are the Jags, so they're going to suck regardless of what they do.
Clap him off, Gino. That's a hell of a spray there. That's
I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie. Like, I actually was just spellbound by that. That was unbelievable. Spellbound. It was like I could not take my eyes off the man. Have a look at him. Wow.
Yeah, he's fired up. This is going to be a weekly thing. Clap him off. That was amazing. Amazing. Look, while we're on the subject of spraying people, obviously you probably have got some players in your lineups that are just performing below expectation. You took them high, you took them in the middle rounds, and they're just not doing what you think they're supposed to do. Gino, if you could name any one player in your current lineup, whether it be any of your leagues at the moment, who needs a spray, mate? Who needs a spray?
Who needs a spray is big Mark Andrews. Now, I don't care
Great one.
what the offense is doing. I don't care what Lamar's doing. I don't care what Harbaugh is doing. I drafted this guy in round 4. Tight end number 3/4 in some expert consensus rankings before the draft. What have I got? Oh, yeah. 10 points for the season. Not even. Like, really? Tight end number 4 off the board in expert consensus for a round 4 pick for me. He is not getting it done. And I said that Likely would be the same. Likely had that big anomaly game and has done 0 since. So moving forward, I understand that they've got a new shiny toy in Derrick Henry and they've always been a run-first offense and Jackson runs the ball as well. But like Lamar, seriously, dude, he has been your number 1 guy for X amount of years, number 1 in red zone targets, only behind Ja'Marr Chase coming into this season. Where is it? Tell me where it is because I haven't seen it yet.
If I could be frank, Mark Andrews looks old too. And
well,
the
apparently,
looks like it shot him.
Yep, 100%. And apparently the car accident that he had, that was minor. It was serious but minor at the same time with his injuries. There's no way he's either not 100% fit or he's getting old real damn quick.
Well, that injury as well that he sustained last year in the primetime game against the Bengals as well, and then I totally forgot about the car accident too. So it's probably just 2 injuries that have kind of just compounded his season this year. So it makes complete sense why you'd be upset with Mark Andrews at the moment, and overall that Baltimore Ravens offense, right? Look, for me, fellas, although I haven't started him in the last week, though, but his name is Brandon Aiyuk. And the reason why I've gone Brandon Aiyuk is because throughout the offseason, and you guys know that he dragged on about getting a contract, and a contract that was probably well above what he would have expected up until the 11th hour once he got it. We just haven't seen the production in the first 3 weeks. What he has netted me so far is 15 points over those 3 weeks. You've got injuries across the board in San Francisco, which would mean that you would get the lion's share in terms of targets, right? You have no Debo there. Jawan Jennings outsnapped you. Aiyuk, when Puka went down for my team, I needed someone in a pinch to come in. I started you, and you did nothing for me as your flex. As a result, I benched you this week, and although you scored me 7 points, would have helped me, I lost by 20. So I need you to fire for next week. You could be a consideration. I'm thin at wide receiver. The injury woes of San Francisco are not going to go away, and I need Aiyuk to come to the fore. Aiyuk, where are you, mate? Where are you? Any honourable mentions?
Yeah, let me have my go. I've got one. Now, I'm dirty on him for 2 reasons. One, because the quarterback I wanted to draft was drafted by Geno beforehand. So it left me with this guy. So I've got CJ Stroud. He's been okay. Nothing spectacular. I get it. He's had a hard schedule at the moment. And I thought he was going to rectify that this week against Minnesota. But obviously the Minnesota defense is better than what was predicted because they have shut out the 49ers. They have literally shut out that Houston Texans offense. But I need a little bit more in CJ Stroud. I'm a huge believer in him. I've invested money in him as well with getting collector cards from him. So CJ Stroud needs to lift, and he's got a good head on his shoulders. He's not a sookie baby like Caleb Williams or whatever. I'm sure he will rectify it. And you saw it like I don't know if you guys watched that game when things were tough. He wasn't slouching his head. He wasn't pointing fingers. He's just a good level-headed kid, and I'm sure he's going to rectify that. But you need to start performing it to help me out as well.
Yeah, look, just on that, like good character, right? It's infectious, right? Throughout any sporting team, right? And even after that loss against Minnesota, he was still signing autographs after the game, right? So, just doing his bit for the kids. So
Caleb Williams went to a nail salon after the game to de-stress. So Shows the difference in mentality.
Okay, so we'll move on. Our next segment is who would you rather for the rest of the season? Garrett Wilson. Geez, Garrett Wilson's been mentioned a few times this podcast. Garrett Wilson or Davante Adams?
That's because he's been a disappointment. That's why. Uh, for me, and it's only just based on strength of schedule and also the potential, because that's what we're basing it off. And the situation, like the Jets' offense is looking better as the weeks go on. Even though like Alan Lazard is looking like the better guy, I would still take Garrett Wilson, even though him and Davante Adams have got similar stat lines and so forth. I still will take Garrett Wilson, despite this.
I'm taking Wilson too, and only because of the better quarterback play. I think Wilson, as I said earlier, is probably going to be a slow burner, but I think once that connection is established firmly between himself and Aaron Rodgers, I think that's when you're going to see some magic. So I think definitely Wilson.
I think what I'm hearing between both of you is that the ceiling is probably higher at, or the floor is probably higher at the Jets versus the Raiders because of their quarterback situation. So I think it's unanimous. I'm the same. I'll go the same way. I think I'd take Garrett Wilson as well.
And just to say, this has got nothing to do with talent, because for me, Davante Adams is still the second best wide receiver in the game. This is just fantasy perspective. He doesn't look old or anything like that. His situation just absolutely sucks. But he's got himself to blame for that because he chose the Raiders.
Okay. And the next one would be Jonathan Taylor versus Jahmyr Gibbs. Gino, I'll swing it with you. You've got Jahmyr Gibbs.
I do have Jahmyr Gibbs, and for me, it's Jahmyr Gibbs who I'd be going for the rest of the season. Not that I've watched a lot of Jonathan Taylor, but I just like the way the Lions offense operates. Even though they've been a little bit sputtery for the first 3 weeks, not really firing on all cylinders, I just think... And look, Gibbs hasn't had that enormous game yet either. He's averaging around 15, 16 points a game, which is really good for a running back, whether it's running back 1 or 2. I think once that Lions offense actually starts to hum along and tick along as it was last year, I think that's when you're going to see Gibbs really start to take over and have those really big boom games. So for me, it's Gibbs.
This is a tough one because right now you'd be saying as if you wouldn't choose Jonathan Taylor. But let's put it into perspective. Jonathan Taylor has had 2 games of 100 rushing yards. One was last week, which was off 12 carries. The other one was this week, which was off 23 carries. Like, his yards per game were not bad, but against tougher opposition where the defensive line was better and you can shut down Anthony Richardson, he went for 3 yards per clip, but he saved his score with a touchdown. I think with Jonathan Taylor, you're going to have a lot of peaks and a lot of low games. Now, if Anthony Richardson is off and the game plan is open, neutralize where they're going to nullify the run, I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be neutralized a lot more. Now, having said that, against the Chicago defense last week, they leaned on the run a lot more. And that's how they were able to steal the win, because Anthony Richardson is really not looking great. He's making some throws which look effortless, but at the same time, he's very inaccurate at the same time. Having said all that, Jahmyr Gibbs hasn't hit his stride yet. I still feel he's going to be the featured back by the end of the season, even by about week 8, week 9, let's say. He's definitely more explosive. He has the better O-line. He's in the better team. He's also a PPR guy, so he will get those catches. Now, in the first 3 games, Jonathan Taylor's only got 3 receptions. So that's the other thing as well. I would still take Jahmyr Gibbs for the rest of the season.
Look, I'd probably go the other way, only because that would I take, and I asked myself a different question. Would I take Jahmyr Gibbs over David Montgomery? No. At the moment. Not at the moment. From what I'm seeing over the last 3 weeks, he's out-snapping or out-rushing Jahmyr Gibbs by 11 attempts, so 20% over Gibbs in that period. So if I'm looking at my lineup, because I've got Montgomery, I'm taking Jonathan Taylor just to have that spread because I don't believe in stacking players from the same team, particularly when I see the split of attempts between Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery themselves. So they account for about 90 rushing attempts over the last 3 weeks, and Montgomery has 50 of them. So if that trend continues to go, like Yen said, if you're thinking that Gibbs is going to be the main back by week 8, I'm not too sure when that's going to come through because David Montgomery is having a very productive 3 weeks. So for me, to split it out, that I'd be taking Jonathan Taylor because of my own lineup. So
yeah, and that's fair. That's fair. And you have to obviously sometimes think about spreading your plays over a number of different, higher powered offenses. And that's completely fair, I guess. For me, when we touched on earlier about handcuffing running backs, for me, it's not only about, there's no lie. I want David Montgomery. I've offered you how many trades for him. I'm not, but for me, it's also about that security of locking in my second round pick with David Montgomery or vice versa should one of them get hurt, because at the end of the day, they are in a high powered offense and they are going to probably score quite heavily and be leading in most games, most weeks once they get going.
That's fair. Well, that's the end of that segment. We'll go to the next segment and we're going to preview week 4 games. We're almost at the end of the podcast, guys. So we'll look at a few games and we'll look at the first one would be Cowboys and Giants. This one's a tosser because the Giants beat the Browns. The Cowboys have lost twice at home. Jeez, I wouldn't even know. Like, do you ride the wave here and go Giants first? So they are Thursday Night Football in New York. It looks like it. Yes, it is.
I think the Cowboys are going to come into New York and beat the absolute pants off the Giants. Division rivals, the Cowboys defense has been dimmed down over the last couple of weeks by some pretty sound beatings, and I think they're going to have a point to prove. And who better than to prove it against by Mr. Turnover and Fumble, Daniel Jones? So, again, division rival. I think the Cowboys D is going to feast in this game, and I think the Cowboys will get back on track.
I agree. This is a similar situation to when I said Baltimore will smash Dallas. Now, the score flattered Dallas towards the end of it, but let's be real, it was 28-6 at one point. And Dak did what Dak did and stat padded at the end. So he made it a relatively close game. Dak is at his optimal when there is no pressure and the game is finished. So, but in this particular instance, I think they're going to come and they're going to smash the Giants, regardless of their 2 wins. But having said that, considering what other teams have done against Dallas, I think a safe play would be Devin Singletary this week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you haven't got any more to touch on that, I would. I don't know. This is a toss-up for me. The Cowboys have not looked great. You know how I feel about Dak. Is he going to go into New York and beat the pants off the Giants? I don't know. That's a hard one for me. If I'm looking at this loosely, if they do run Singletary into the ground, and as they utilize him this week, and considering the way the rushing attack or their defense against running backs in the last 2 weeks with the Cowboys, I don't know. I think the Giants. I think the Giants might pip them here. I'm taking the home team here, guys.
Fair enough. We'll see.
Vikings at Packers. So it looks like it's divisional games. It's, most of them, I should say. Well, the first 2 we're reviewing. But Vikings at Packers. What are you thinking, boys?
I think that the Packers, if Jordan Love plays, will win. I think it will be a relatively high-scoring game. Having said that, the Packers D has been really good the last couple of weeks. It's like they fixed up those deficiencies they had against the Eagles, and they haven't had many scores against them. But I do like the Packers as a team more than what I like the Minnesota Vikings. In terms of a fantasy perspective, I'm actually not sure in this game because there are instances where I've seen Justin Jefferson be shut out by Jair Alexander and other times where he's had the better of him. So that's going to be an interesting 50-50 play. And then if you're looking at it from the Packers perspective as well, like who do you start out of the wide receivers? You just don't know who's going to go off in this particular game and against a really, really stout defense. So yeah, I'm not sure. They're all risky plays this week.
I think Jordan Love was quite close to actually playing this week, or they made it sound like it was quite close. So if Jordan Love plays this week, I actually think the Packers will get the job done at home. Obviously, division rivals. Yes, the Vikings D has been playing very well. So has the offense. I think that the Packers tend to get the wood over the Vikings. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure the Packers have had the wood over the Vikings. So, especially if Jordan Love plays, I think the Packers will get the job done. And I think that Jayden Reed in Love's absence has been the better of the 4 wide receivers and weapons. So I think Jayden Reed is a must-start if Love plays.
Yeah, Gino, just quickly, I'm with you. I think only over history too. I think LaFleur knows how to play the Vikings, irrespective of who's at quarterback, for the Vikings, that is. And being at home, I think it's a fortress there against the Packers, against the Vikings. I think the Packers will pip them. I think they'll keep Malik Willis out of harm's way in that offense from the Vikings defense because they are on fire. So run it through Josh Jacobs, thinking and dunking around. I think I've seen enough of Malik Willis over the last 2 weeks just to manage the game. And I think the Vikings will have their first loss this week, so I'm taking the Packers. Bengals at Panthers. This is a toss-up. Who wants to go first?
Bengals are 0-3. You're calling season right now 0-3. And that's fair. You haven't been great. I mean, there's been off-season issues with Chase and Higgins and blah, blah, blah. Joe Burrow's hair dye, like really, nothing's gone right. So, look, there has only been 6 teams in NFL history that have started 0-3 and that have made the playoffs. That is, and it's a short list, the 81 Jets, the 82 Bucks, 92 Chargers, 95 Lions, 98 Bills, and recently the 2018 Texans. So there's some hope. The Texans being recently, there's some hope. It couldn't have worked out any better that Andy Dalton is going to be the starting QB this week against his former team as well. Now, I am tipping boil over again. I'm tipping the Bengals to be 0-4 after this week.
It's a fair call.
It's a fair call, but I mean, you got to have a look what the Panthers did this week with Andy Dalton. Like, you can't ignore that offense was humming. Now, I know that Adam Thielen went off late in the game with some sort of niggle and some sort of injury, but
is he still playing?
He is still playing. He's probably a skeleton or something. He just puts on a jersey and some pads every week, but he's still playing. What I saw today from the Bengals against the Commanders wasn't great. And look, the Commanders D wasn't awesome either, and it was a fairly high-scoring game. But, I mean, they let a rookie just take control. And did he take control? Like, this kid's going to be a star. We're talking about Jaden Daniels here. We're getting an experienced quarterback with a team that has had their first win. They've got some spark. They've got some momentum. So I'm tipping the Bengals to be 0-4. Sorry.
Don't be. They're 0-3, the first time since 2019. So
I'm tipping the Bengals. Like, look, better list, better coaching. All right, you probably wouldn't say that based on records and so forth. I'm a believer in the Bengals. Regardless of the result, I thought Joe Burrow was still very good today. Yoshivas is a really good wide receiver that you've managed to unearth, and if T. Higgins doesn't rectify his attitude, he can just sit on the bench because Yoshivas looks pretty good as a wide receiver. And Chase Brown looks pretty good as well. He looks the more expensive of the running backs.
Yeah.
Zach Moss had a few okay runs, but he doesn't look anything special, like as I expected from Zach Moss. So I still expect the Bengals to win. I expect Jahmyr Chase to have a monster game and have a huge scoring outing for fantasy perspective. And like, if you need a flex play, I really like Chase Brown. I think he's looked really good. I hope you guys feed him more. That's the only thing.
Oh, Bengals at Panthers. So the Bengals haven't been 0-3 since 2019, and that's before Joe Burrow got there, where they went 11 losses straight to actually get Joe Burrow, the number one pick in 2020. So this is actually uncharted territory for the Bengals, being 0-3, because the narrative over the last 5 years that they're 1-9 in the first 2 weeks, right? And in two of those 5 years, they've made it to the AFC Championship and the Super Bowl, right? So people are kind of riding the history wave at the moment that they can overcome this. But at 0-3, and just to touch on what Gino was saying too, there is a feel about this season that doesn't feel like last year or even the year before. And I think it's got to do with the off-season talk with contract situations and certain players requesting trades like Hendrickson and T. Higgins, and the Jahmyr Chase contract situation has kind of lingered into the early portion of the season. So there's a bit of a distraction there. So I'm not too sure how the Bengals are going to dig themselves out of this hole, because 0-3 in the Joe Burrow era isn't a thing. This is the first time, right? So their backs are up against the wall. But I agree. Joe Burrow has looked great in the last 2 weeks against KC. He outplayed Mahomes. Jayden Daniels outplayed Joe Burrow today, but the stat-wise, 320 yards, 3 touchdowns, he looked great. And he had, for a portion of the game, he had to carry that team because the defense just capitulated versus what we saw last week against KC. So against the Panthers in Carolina, I'm going to tip the Panthers. I think Andy Dalton... Yeah, he's got the tails up of Carolina. They're going back home. They're expecting a win. That offense against the Raiders looked pretty efficient there. I think the Bengals are going to carry more baggage going into week 4. So not only have they got the off-field situations, but they've got to carry an 0-3 start. It's just not a calm situation at the moment if you're a Bengals fan, right? And so you can't expect to think that you're going to go into a game, particularly with Carolina, who are touted to be one of the worst teams in the league, and think you're just going to walk in there and get the dub straight off. No, I don't believe it. I hope the Bengals actually come out with a win, but hey, it's a toss-up. At 0-3, I'll take the Panthers in a tight game. Okay, Eagles at Bucks.
Tough one, because Eagles won, but they didn't look fantastic. And then the Bucks lost and they looked abysmal. Let's be real. Nick Sirianni is coaching for his job. The last couple of weeks, his coaching performance has been atrocious. I don't understand what he has against going for field goals. He always wants to go for it on 4th down. The game shouldn't have been that close. If he took a couple of field goals early where necessary, the scoreline wouldn't have been as dangerous. And lucky they got Saquon Barkley, again, who was there for the preseason, who worked his tail off to get fit and work with the O-line and Jalen Hurts. Now, having said that, the Bucks on the opposite end were just not very good, and who would have thought that? They were just atrocious. It's a tough game. I would go... I don't know, because is Davante Smith going to play? He was in concussion protocol towards the end. So you've got Saquon Barkley and Dallas Goedert for this week as your offensive options. And now, having just said that, I may have talked myself out of that pick, and now I'm picking the Bucks and expect Mike Evans to actually have a day out, because Philly's D really hasn't been that good. Actually, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, because Chris Godwin is in a contract again. He's probably been better out of the two, or at least more consistent out of the two so far this year. So I would say the safer play this week would be Chris Godwin, and I would be picking the Bucks to win because of the Sirianni handicap that they've got.
Gino, before you go, Chris Godwin is wide receiver 3 for the season. So he is having a nice start of the season there. So to your point, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one to pick. I just don't like what I've seen from the Bucks run game, unfortunately. And obviously we know that the Eagles offense is centered around, their run game. Now, obviously more so with Saquon Barkley. Jalen Hurts obviously runs the ball a fair bit as well. I think if I'm looking at it logically, I think the Eagles should win. I just think that even though Baker's obviously started well and Mike Evans and Godwin, as you touched on, they're all flying. Last week was put it down to a bad week. I just think the Eagles maybe have been a little bit more consistent now. Obviously, there's the injury concerns with Devonta Smith. They are going to get A.J. Brown back, so that's obviously a big plus. So it'll sort of be similar usage this week for the Eagles in terms of their receivers. So I obviously expect Goddard to get a number of targets again this week if Smith misses. I just like what I've seen more from the Eagles' run game, I think, and I think that might be a telling factor in them winning this game.
Yeah, at Bucks. Yeah, so the Bucks had a bad loss this week. I've kind of turned the page on Baker Mayfield, and I think he'll have a bounce-back game. So I'm going to take the Bucks here. I think there's just a bit of inconsistency with Philly. Bad loss at home against Atlanta, and they obviously got the dub this week. But if we take the law of averages at the moment, I'm going to take the Bucks at home against Philly. We'll move on, and we'll go Bills at Ravens.
This is a big one. It's a big one because
no, it's not.
Look, I get it. I get it. The point, where I'm coming from is we've obviously finally seen the Ravens offense, even though it wasn't great passing wise, their run game finally got going. Now, the Bills have been pretty solid though with their run D. I think that this is the first defense potentially that Josh Allen, not that I think he's going to have some issues, but they'll be a little bit more stout. Being at the Ravens, no, I can't. I'm not tipping the Ravens. I'm tipping the Bills. I'm tipping the Bills to win the game. I just
talk
don't
yourself
think,
out of it.
I actually did. I thought as I was thinking, I actually did. So I'll go the Bills, but I don't think it's going to be as convincing as you think. Only because the Ravens may have just awoken a little bit. So I'll go the Bills. And who do you start? I'm not going to say Josh Allen because that's obvious. Let's go someone like Khalil Shakir. Okay, let's go Khalil Shakir, who had a good game again today. Seems to be a favorite of Josh Allen's. And let's see if he can blow the top off the Ravens D.
I'm contrary. I think the Bills are going to win by about 10, 12 points, to be honest with you. If we're going on recency and how the Ravens finished the game, they almost lost. And the defense is not what it was in the last couple of years. Like, you can put points on this defense. Their offensive line is not that good. Now, Henry had a big game because he played against a defensive line that is no good itself. So I don't understand. I understand that it's at Baltimore, but Baltimore is not Baltimore of old. And the Buffalo Bills are just humming. They are humming perfectly on both offense and defense. Josh Allen is the MVP, and he can have a stinker for the next 2 weeks, and he'll still probably be the leader for MVP. The offense is dynamic. Like, you don't know who the number one receiver is going to be week in and week out. He just spread the ball just remarkably. I can't speak highly enough of Josh Allen. 9 touchdowns to 0 interceptions so far this year. James Cook has dispelled all the concerns I had about him. Like, I thought he wasn't that good because of the number of fumbles and drops he's had in the past. That is out of his game so far for the first 3 weeks. I think the Bills are going to win quite comfortably. I think Derrick Henry is going to be a virtual no-show in this game, considering the Bills' D is so stout. And I think you can start anyone from James Cook to Dalton Kincaid again in this game.
Yeah, I don't think this is close. I think the Bills are just going to run rampant against the Ravens. And even if you're looking at a close game, even if you were projecting it to be a close game, are you going to trust Justin Tucker to kick you into a win? Because at the moment, this is his worst field goal percentage I've seen in all his years. And he'll be a Hall of Famer, but he's kicking at 62% from field goals. No misses the extra points, but he does not look like a shell of himself. So if they need a game to actually go to a kick, who are you going to throw out there? You put Justin Tucker out to actually close the game for you, but he'd be riding low on confidence. That offense doesn't look great. as to Yen's point too, they literally just held in there. The Cowboys were coming back. And what the Bills did today to the Jags and put a 40 burger on them. Jeez, I don't understand how. I don't see a road where the Ravens would get it. No, tell a lie. Like, it have to be off the back of Lamar Jackson, where he'll just rush it. But like that game against KC, where he kept them in the game, like that's where I see it happening for the Ravens. But yeah, I don't know. All signs are pointing to Josh Allen and just continuing his way as being the number one MVP, Offensive Player of the Year. Yeah, I've got the Bills in a landslide.
Well, you said Tucker kicking for points late. What about Lamar Jackson? Do you trust him to make the throws late?
No.
All right, he's had some game-winning
no.
drives, but he's also inconsistent there. And if you're basing it off week one as well, do you trust him to make the throws when needed?
No, but that's the only thing, is that if the game actually comes down to a kick, right? Like, I don't know if the Ravens were able to keep pace with the Bills' offense at the moment. So you're going to be playing from behind anyway. And even if you do catch up, right? Like, where do you go as the Ravens' offense? You throw Justin, of course you throw him out there, but they're on a low at the moment. So I don't know. It's the Bills for me. Bills landslide, hands down. Seahawks at Lions. The 3-0 Seahawks in the NFC West. Who would have thunk it? At the Lions. I think the Lions are 2-1, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yep.
Seahawks at Lions. What are you thinking, boys?
Seahawks at Lions. I mean, I certainly didn't see him at 3-0. That's for sure. This is actually a doozy, because even though it's at Detroit, you can't question what the Seahawks are doing at the moment. Like, they're just playing really well. They've got a new coach. I know the offense hasn't changed a lot. Their defense has just been solid, been really sound. So, like I said earlier again, the Lions offense hasn't quite clicked into top gear as it was last year. So I'm going to go and upset and go the Seahawks, I think. In this one, I think the Seahawks move to 4-0.
When I said at the start of the season that the 49ers won't win the NFC West, I wasn't expecting it to be at the expense of the Seattle Seahawks and them winning it. I thought the Rams were going to be the ones that take the NFC West. But it just looks like the more dynamic play calling has definitely helped the Seattle Seahawks. If I look at DK Metcalf, for example, he's got a new lease on life and he's top 5 wide receiver at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Having said all of that, I still expect Detroit to win. I think they're the better team. I think they got the better quarterback, the better weapons, the better everything. I still think the Lions are going to win this one. And maybe by about a touchdown or so as well.
DK Metcalf, so half PPR, wide receiver 7, so having a stellar season, so about 15, 16 points a game averaging over the first 3 weeks, so having a great season. He was actually there for me for the taking in one of the rounds, and I bypassed them. Yeah, that one could bite me in the butt later on down the track, because I am thin at wide receiver now. So, Gino, I'm going to go with you, man. I think we're just going to ride this wave that Seattle are just going to pip him again. I think. I mean, what's Geno Smith? He's quite efficient through the air, so he's 75% completion rate over the first 3 weeks. I mean, his touchdown to interception ratio is on par, so he needs to clean that up. But yeah, I just wasn't expecting this, and there's a few other teams like Seattle that have surprised me. So I'm going to go Seattle at the Lions. I think there's enough tape on the Lions for Seattle to actually go in there and beat them. To Yen's point, though, the Lions have the better squad. They have the better wide receivers. But just overall, I like to see. I'm liking what I'm seeing out of Geno Smith. So, out of that Seattle team in general. So, yeah, I'm going Seattle in an upset, a tight one, and that.
Winning form is good form.
All right, guys. Well, that comes to the end of our podcast, week 3. Thank you for joining us at 3-Man Coverage. You can find us on Instagram at 3_man_coverage_podcast, and on X and on Facebook. We'll share all the details in our description with YouTube. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'm Freddie. This is Gino. This is Yan. Week 3 is out. We'll see you week 4.